What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm here to break down the NFL Week 7 wide receivers. We have a big slate of games, and honestly, I had a really hard time breaking down a pool of wide receivers I'm really interested in. I'm interested in a lot of guys this week, so that's going to be fun making lineups on Sunday morning or Saturday night whenever I decide to do it. So we're going to get into a good bit of wide receivers this week. But before I do, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, turn on the notification bell. Tell me who you think the best wide receiver play of the week is. Personally, right now, I'm honestly not sure. I think it might be Michael Thomas. I think it could be Jamison Crowder. I think it could be Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, this is probably Terry McLaurin, Kenny Golladay. There's a bunch of great wide receiver plays on this slate that we're gonna get into and break down. Yeah, let's get into it. We're going to start with Stephon Diggs, $7,000, going up against, the Jets. I mean, I'm pretty much just at this point playing everybody against the Jets. They're terrible. He's going to get Pierre Desir, who's just been horrible this year. We're just going to go all the way over here. I'm going to stick for most of the damn video, where he has an overall positive offense versus defensive matchup. The line of this game is 46, and they are favored. That's wrong. The Jets have allowed the 20th most points to wide receivers this year, and he has the 20th best individual matchup, which is really good on the entire slate this week. So that's really solid. Definitely really like Stephon Diggs' overall matchup. When we go look at usage for Diggs, I took out week 5 for the average targets because that's when John Brown missed. But in weeks 1 through 4 and week 6, he has an average of 8.6 targets per game. This is not going to be a shootout game, so Diggs' upside, it's a little bit iffy, I think. Because it's a game that the Bills should get ahead by a lot, and they should stay ahead by a lot for the rest of the game. So probably a running script game. I think Diggs will have a good game because they can't guard him, but I don't think he has really maybe the upside to win you a tournament. But I do think he's a solid player, and he probably won't get a ton of ownership. So he's not relative super cheap though, but Diggs is fine. I definitely do think he is a solid option. Jamison Crowder is up next. He's pretty cheap. Let me go look real quick. $5,900 for Jamison Crowder is really not a lot. For the usage he's been getting in volume, the overall offense versus defense matchup isn't good. That's always going to be when you have the Jets. But he is playing in a slot against Teron Johnson, who is the 8th best matchup on the entire slate for me, and he will be playing from behind, so that is really good. The Bills are to 24 for ranked defense against wide receivers, though, so that's not great. But the slot is definitely a spot you want to attack him from. You don't want to go up against Trey White. And then Josh Norman, honestly, isn't a bad spot to go against either. I mean, Rashad Perryman, I'm not putting in the video, but he's not terrible. So if you want to look at he's averaging 13 targets in week 1 and week 6, which is the week where you had Rashad Perryman playing as well. I wanted to make sure that's involved, but he hasn't seen under 10 targets a game this year. He's just been getting absolutely peppered with targets, and he never gets owned. And I think he's in a pretty good matchup this week. They're going to be playing from behind. I don't think a lot of people are going to want to play him against the Bills because it's the Bills. They have a good reputation, but he's definitely getting the usage, and I think Jamison Crowder does have some pretty solid upside. Next, we're going to go to Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, the two Cincinnati Bengals receivers going up against the Cleveland Browns, who have allowed the 3rd most points to wide receivers this year. Tyler Boyd's going to get Kevin Johnson in the slot, which is a kind of a tough matchup, to be honest. But T. Higgins is going to get Terrence Mitchell on the outside, which is just great because assuming Denzel Ward goes up against A.J. Green. So that's a great matchup overall there. They're not going to be favored in this game. They're going to be playing from behind, and the Browns have allowed a lot of points to wide receivers this year. We go get volume. T. Higgins really didn't see any volume week 1, obviously, but since then, 6, 9, 7, 8, 6. He's just seeing a ton of volume. And then Tyler Boyd's averaging 8 targets per game. These guys are just the 1 and 2 wide receivers on this team. They're in a good spot. I think they're solid plays that probably won't get a ton of ownership. Neither of them are too expensive either. So definitely like some Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins. If it makes you feel any better, I am playing T. Higgins in fantasy football this week because I have a ton of players on bye. So I think he's a good play this week. Cleveland just hasn't been good at stopping anybody. Terrence Mitchell isn't really a good cornerback. So definitely a spot I want to attack. And on the other side of this game, Odell Beckham, I want to attack Cincinnati. He's going to get William Jackson, but William Jackson has been solid, but nothing too good. Line on this game is 50. Overall positive offense versus defensive matchup for Odell Beckham. Cincinnati is only allowing the 19th most points to wide receivers in the league. But Odell's Odell. We know he can explode all the time. We saw him have a really good game against Cincinnati on Thursday night, week 2, I think. It was week 2 or 3. So we know what he can do against this team. When you go look at usage he's been getting, outside of last week where we only saw 4 targets, he's seeing pretty good usage every single week, averaging 7.1 targets per game. But if you take that out, it's more like 8. So take out that 4, it's more like 8. So Odell Beckham, definitely someone I will have some interest in. I'm going to play him in tournaments. Not a cash play. None of these. I mean, I think Crowder's a fine cash play, but outside of that so far, probably want to get to any of these guys in cash. Now we're going to go to Pittsburgh, where this is just so hard to figure out, man. I don't really know what's going to happen, and I don't think a lot of people do, because Deontay Johnson's back this week, and we've seen Chase Claypool take a boost in the offense since Deontay Johnson's been out. So I don't really think anyone knows what's going to happen. They're playing up against Tennessee, who has allowed the 5th most points to wide receivers, and they all have good individual cornerback matchups because the cornerbacks in Tennessee, they're not that good. Overall positive offense versus defense spot, high total game at 51.5. But so we saw Chase Claypool when Deontay Johnson was there really not get a lot of usage, but in weeks 5 and 6, 11 targets. Now, he only saw 4 last week. I think he had 2 touchdowns, right? 1 or 2 touchdowns. He had a great game, but he's finding the end zone at a ridiculous clip that I don't think is sustainable. So I think regardless, I might stay away from Chase Claypool this week because negative regression is coming his way, and I don't think that that's a spot to get to. Now, Deontay Johnson is the one that I think we really need to wonder about, because he's only $4,200. If he's going to see 10 or 13 targets like he did in week 1 and 2, he's a steal. Like, he's the best value on the entire slate, because that kind of volume at that price is just you're not going to get that too often. But now Chase Claypool back, who was pretty much just playing Deontay Johnson's role, he was playing in the same spot as him. What's going to happen? Is Chase Claypool just going to go back to not getting a ton of snaps, or is Deontay Johnson not going to see a ton of volume anymore? Or is it just going to be James Washington's gone, and now Deontay Johnson or Chase Claypool's filling the James Washington role, which is about 4 to 5 targets a game, but we don't know which one that's going to be. So it's a really tough spot to get to, and because of that, I don't think I want to go to any of these Pittsburgh receivers in cash. I definitely don't want to go to Juju in cash. He's only averaging 5.6 targets per game, and he's too expensive. Juju's probably not the best play out of all these guys. He's playing in the slot. He does have the best individual matchup, though. But, I mean, it's just a tough one to really get to. I think these guys are all fine for tournaments because we know the upside it produced. I mean, Chase Claypool has extreme touchdown upside. Deontay Johnson has extreme target upside. And then Juju's just a great receiver. He has upside everywhere. I still think he's the best wide receiver on his team. He's just not being utilized like it. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens here. So, avoiding them all in cash, but I think tournaments, you got to take shots on them. It's a high total game. If you want to make stacks with these guys as well, I think that's fine. Any way you want to go about it, probably two of these guys with Big Ben and running it back with like A.J. Brown or Henry or something, or even Jonnu, I think is all viable. So those guys are definitely in play. Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller for Houston going against Green Bay in the highest total game on the week, are on the slate at 57. They're not going to be favored in this game. They're going to be playing from behind, and we know what Houston Texans can do in playing from behind. The problem is with Will Fuller is he has a terrible matchup against Jair Alexander, assuming that's who Jair shadows. I don't know which one Jair is going to shadow, or if he's going to shadow either of them. It could overall just be a horrible matchup for these guys anyway, but these guys have been seeing more volume recently. The Packers have a defense that I don't think is as good as people say it is. I think Jair Alexander's elite. Like, he's definitely great, but the rest of the defense is iffy. So Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks are in a good spot in a really high total game that I definitely want to get exposure to high total games like that. We're seeing Will Fuller is getting 8.2 targets per game. He's just getting a ton of usage. And then the last 2 weeks since Bill O'Brien's been fired, Brandon Cooks has been way more used in the offense as well, seeing 9 and 12 targets. So he's going to be more utilized playing from behind now. So I definitely like Brandon Cooks more ever since that dud of a week he put up 3 weeks ago in week 4. I think this is a good spot for him to bounce. Well, not really bounce back. He's been bouncing back to just keep up his production. Same thing with Will Fuller. It's still the Jair Alexander thing scares me, but we don't really know which one he's going to be on. And in such a high total game, I don't hate it, especially if he's not going to be on. You know, he could just be going back and forth from these guys, and then whichever one he's not on for that play could get the touchdown. So both these guys are good players, really, really good wide receivers. So I definitely like getting exposure there. DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault for Jacksonville going against the LA Chargers are in a spot with a pretty high total game that's, I think, going overlooked. 49.5, I mean, compared to all the 50s, it's kind of low, but, like, it's still, like, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the LA Chargers, who are two teams who just, their defenses are hurt. Oh, well, the Chargers defense is hurt. The Jaguars defense is just bad. They'll be playing from behind in this game more than likely. They have good individual matchups for Chark and Shenault. When we go look at volume, Chark's averaging 6.8 targets per game, and Chenault's averaging 5.8. So they're getting usage in the passing game a good bit. So I do think they're very solid options just in stacks and bringbacks. Probably not going to go there for cash, but I do think in tournaments they're very solid options. A.J. Brown has been pretty much just so utilized in this offense ever since he's returned. It's a 51.5 game total on this game, and the Steelers have actually allowed us to have most points to wide receivers. I think this is going to be a spot where I don't think a lot of people are going to be on because Pittsburgh has this notoriously really good defense, which they do. They're elite against the run, but they're forcing you to pass. It's like Tampa Bay last year when they basically you couldn't run against Tampa Bay last year, and it's still like that, and you had to pass. and they would allow a good bit of points to pass to receivers. It's the same thing with Pittsburgh here, except they're kind of better at guarding receivers still than Tampa was last year. Tampa's improved a lot this year against receivers as well, but it's a similar style of defense, and A.J. Brown is getting a ton of usage. I mean, we've seen him average 8 targets in the 3 games he's played this year, and I don't see any reason why that would slow down. I mean, even if Corey Davis comes back, I don't think that's really going to matter. He's just the best receiver on his team. He's going to get Joe Hayden or Steven Nelson, probably a combination of both, who are good cornerbacks, but are not like shut down elite corners. They're pretty solid, and Ryan Tannehill's been really good since last year, and he's been able to be fine with like really good defenses. So I don't really think A.J. Brown's that much of a problem. I don't think a lot of people are going to play him either, so I think he's a really solid option. Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick are going against Kansas City. Their defenses look pretty good, the Chiefs, but they're going to be playing from behind in this game. I mean, obviously, like Jeudy and Tim Patrick, they're going to be playing from behind, and Jerry Jeudy has a really good matchup in the slot. Tim Patrick on the outside, maybe not as much, but I do think this is definitely a spot they can excel at, and they're not expensive at all. We're seeing Jeudy average 6.6 targets per game, and Patrick's averaging 5.8. So they're getting usage. They're going to be playing from behind, maybe a little more usage than normal. So I do think they are both pretty solid options if you want to get there, but only for tournaments. Definitely not going to go there for cash. I don't think I've had one cash play yet. There's cash plays. We'll get to them, but I don't think there's been one guy I've said is good for cash yet. Tyreek Hill, he's cheap. He's only like 6,700, 6,200, something like that. He's really cheap. 6,400. I was in the right ballpark. He's too cheap for Tyreek Hill, but they've just been, I mean, basically what teams have been doing to the Chiefs is they've been saying, look, you're gonna have to beat us on the ground. We're not allowing you to throw deep, and that kind of really hurts Tyreek Hill's fantasy value. But you have Denver, who is one of a very good run defense, but a horrible pass defense. Like, they're bad. Their corners are all banged up. They've been banged up all year. I think AJ Bouye might be out for the season, and then you have like rookies starting everywhere. So Tyreek Hill's got a good spot. 15th most points allowed to wide receivers is Denver. When you go look at usage, he's only seeing 6.33 targets per game, and I mean that hasn't been good the last few weeks, and only 3 against Buffalo. So that's a little scary, but I think at his upside, if you're stacking the Chiefs, I think he's fine. If you want to get him in solo by himself in lineups, he's fine. I don't want to go there for cash. Again, no cash, but I do think he's a solid play. All right, here we go. Here's a cash viable wide receiver that should probably be one of the first people you just lock into your lineup this week, and that's Keenan Allen. He's only $6,200, which is just ridiculous for Keenan Allen. This is, they're going up against Jacksonville, which is a terrible defense. He has the 23rd best individual cornerback matchup. Jacksonville's allowed the 18th most points to wide receivers, which isn't great, but I'm not really too worried about it. And pretty much since Justin Herbert's been there, which is weeks 2, 3, and 4, I don't really count week 5 because he got hurt in the first quarter in that game. He has seen double-digit targets every single week, averaging 12 on a year per game. That's not including week 5. I don't have that in that stat because, I mean, why should I? Keenan Allen's just been getting targeted at a ridiculous rate, and for only $6,200 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, just feels like a steal. He's great for tournaments. He's great for cash. I love Keenan Allen today. I think he's one of my favorite wide receivers, if not my favorite play on the entire slate. Definitely love going there for sure, and he's definitely someone I want to attack. Mike Williams in the game as well. Always going to be a tournament option for me, averaging 4.66 targets per game with Keenan Allen in. So, I mean, he's always going to be a good tournament play for me, but probably never going to go there in cash. But I always get exposure to Mike Williams tournaments. I'm never going to say not to play him. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb are going up against Washington this week, who has actually allowed the 28th most points to wide receivers this year. Defense isn't as horrible as people want to say. CeeDee Lamb has a really good spot in the slot, though. They've been very bad against slot receivers. This is a game that probably won't be a ton of high scoring, but I don't think anyone really knows what to do with Dallas at this point because we saw how bad it looked on Monday night last week. But like, they're still getting usage. Like, I mean, look, Cooper's averaging 10.83 targets per game, Gallup 5.6, and Lamb 6.83. And Gallup's getting targeted by Andy Dalton a lot in the red zone. So that's something for sure. I mean, Gallup dropped a wide open touchdown last week. So, I mean, for the most part, he's going to catch that and he'll score more points. So I think these guys are definitely in play. Only going to go there for tournaments, though, just because I think the upside's there because they're just great wide receivers. We know the upside they can bring. And I think this game could score a little bit more because I don't think Washington's defense is as great as it's shown so far. But on the other side of this game, you have Terry McLaurin, who I said at the beginning of this video might be my favorite play in the slate, or wide receiver play in the slate, and I think I'm going to stick with that. Look, this game isn't like a high total or anything. It's only 46.5. But Washington's like not favored, and they're playing the Cowboys, and the Cowboys' defense is horrible. They've allowed the 6th most points to wide receivers this year. He's got the 9th best individual cornerback spot, and they're literally on pace to allow like the most points ever for a team ever in the league history. That defense is terrible. He's going to get either Trayvon Diggs or Darryl Worley, who are just both great spots. for him. He's averaging 9.66 targets per game. I mean, we've seen him get 10, 14, 12 some games. Now, some games only 7, 8, and 7, but like a game they're going to be playing from behind in a spot where he should be easily succeeding against, I think he's great. I think Terry McLaurin, he's only $5,800, which is just too cheap for him. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, wide receiver plays on the slate. Love him, love Keenan Allen. They're probably my two favorites. Yeah, I think Terry McLaurin's great. I'm going to get a ton of Terry McLaurin this week. Like I said in my video yesterday, I'm going to get a ton of Aaron Jones. I'm also going to get a ton of Terry McLaurin this week. I think he's just in a great, great spot for way too cheap of a price. Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones going against Atlanta. This could be Marvin Jones week. I think I say it every video, but this every week. But this could be the Marvin Jones week where he explodes. Kenny Galladay's in a great spot as well. Atlanta's allowed the 4th most points to wide receivers this year so far. 56.5 game total on this slate. It's just going to be on this game. It's going to be a ton of scoring. Definitely want to target this game. When you go look at usage, Kenny Galladay's averaging 7 targets a game. Now Marvin Jones only seen 3, 2, and 5 since Galladay's been back, which is a little scary. But like this is such a good matchup for him that I don't care. I'm going to get him in tournaments. I'm going to get him in stacks. Galladay's great for cash. He's great for tournaments. Like him everywhere. But Marvin Jones is really, really someone I like to get for tournaments. Devontae Adams going up against Houston this week. He's going to get Bradley Roby, who's a decent cornerback. And I forgot to put Marquez Valdez-Scantling in here. I'm going to talk about him in a second too. But anyway, this is a game where the line's at 57. It's the highest scoring game on the slate. Houston can't stop anybody. It's overall good positive offense versus defense matchup. Houston's allowed the 8th most points to receivers this year. In the 2 games where Devontae Adams has played a ton, he's averaged 13.5 targets. He's been great. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is the other player in this game, and he's going to get Vernon Hargreaves, who's like terrible. He's just bad. And he could torch them in a high-scoring game. I actually really like Aaron Rodgers stacks to Adams and MVS this week. I think that's a really good spot. He's been getting pretty solid usage since Lazard went out. So I think MVS is a good spot. I didn't forget to put him in the spreadsheet here for this video, but he's definitely someone I do have interest in. So Marquez Valdez-Scantling is someone I want to get some into some lineups. Julio Jones and Ridley going against Detroit, where again the 56.5 game total. This game should shoot out as well. The Detroit Lions have allowed the 9th most points to wide receivers this year. Calvin Ridley has the 2nd best matchup on the entire slate in the league this week for corners. So I think Calvin Ridley looks to be in a really, really solid spot. We're seeing Ridley's averaging 8.5 targets per game, and Jones is averaging 7.5 when Julio's playing. Those are only the games when Julio played. So they're both great tournament plays for me. If you're doing Matt Ryan stacks, I want to get both of them in Matt Ryan stacks. Absolutely love these two. I think they're great plays. Just great cornerback matchups, great high-scoring game, and they're getting usage. So Matt Ryan stacks, so Julio and Ridley look great. If you want to get either of them in cash, I think it's fine. Like I probably want to go there. I'd honestly probably just rather pay for Devontae Adams, or we'll talk about Michael Thomas. But I think they're fine. Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore going up against New Orleans. This New Orleans defense gets a lot of recognition, but they're bad against like receivers this year. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore's the 14th worst cornerback according to PFF right now. So that's a great matchup for Robbie Anderson. You have a game where they should be playing from behind. The Saints have allowed the 14th most points to wide receivers so far this year. We're seeing the usage has come up for DJ Moore recently for sure. He's averaging 8 targets per game. Robbie Anderson's averaging 8.5. I think Panther stacks might be the sneakiest stack on the entire slate this week, because I don't think this New Orleans secondary is good. And DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson could definitely be in for a good game. Now, Michael Thomas is just too cheap, man. Let me go look real quick. I don't want to say the price wrong. Yeah, $7,600 for Michael Thomas. Like, this is the cheapest we've had in like a year and a half for Michael Thomas. He's just way too cheap. It's gonna be, I mean, the matchup doesn't look great, but like, I don't care. Like, we know Michael Thomas. Like, I know in his one game he played this year, he only got targeted 5 times, but he was hurt that game. Like, that's the game he got hurt, and he was playing hurt the entire game. So Michael Thomas, I mean, could just explode. Like, this is a spot where he's just way too cheap, and we don't get cheap Michael Thomas a lot. And as of right now, he's not coming in super highly owned, so this is a spot to attack him for sure. I definitely want to get some of him. Love him for cash, love him for tournaments. Really just love Michael Thomas everywhere. I think he's a great play this week, and I definitely just want to get a ton of exposure to him. DeAndre Hopkins going up against the Seattle Seahawks. This game's total is 56. The Seahawks have allowed the most points to wide receivers in the league this year, and now you get DeAndre Hopkins going up against them. He's averaging right now 9.8 targets per game. We've seen him get to 16 and 12. They're not favored in this game. They should be playing from behind, which is a great spot for DeAndre Hopkins. There's going to be more throwing to him. So I think DeAndre Hopkins looks to be in a great spot. And then locking in Metcalf closes out the Seattle Seahawks against Cardinals, who have actually allowed the least amount of points to wide receivers this year, but they're still cornerbacks who are not grading out well. Patrick Peterson and is the number one corner against Metcalf, and then in the slot, Byron Murphy have not done well. It's just they haven't allowed their touchdowns going to the receivers, the Cardinals, but I think that changed this week. Lockett and Metcalf look great. When we're looking at volume, Lockett's averaging 7.6 targets, Metcalf's averaging 7.8 targets. I wouldn't go there for cash though, because they've been playing at a very, very efficient pace right now, but they're playing slow. Like, they've been a very slow-paced team all year long, and if they're not having those big plays, neither of those two are really going to get there for you, because they're both expensive. And Lockett and Metcalf, like, if Seattle gets up big, they're just going to run it out with Chris Carson, which is why Chris Carson, I think, is a great play. And then you're going to get Lockett and Metcalf are just not going to be as involved. But this game still could shoot out. I think Arizona's offense is really good, so I do think they are solid plays overall. Just temper your expectations. I don't think they're maybe the most amazing plays. But that's really all I got for the wide receivers. Hope you guys got a lot of good information in this video. Hope you guys really enjoyed watching it. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me who you think the best wide receiver play in the slate is, because I'm going with Terry McLaurin. Who do you think the best one is? Leave it below. Thank you guys so much for checking this out, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.